Hello there, and welcome to Notes on Leadership with me, Carrie Phrase, and leadership coach Kristen Berry, where we delve deep into people's backstories to see how it became their leadership story, with a few musical memories thrown in for good measure. Kristen, how are you? I haven't seen you for ages.
It's been so long. I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, although I have heard you escaped the COVID ward, right, at home?
Yes, I left, my whole family with COVID, and I'm hanging strong.
Yeah,
hanging
well done,
tough.
hanging there. Good immune system. Like to hear it. Well, as you know, today I'm going to be interviewing my brother, and we have already chatted to your amazing brother James, who's a leading neurologist in Boston. So tell me, have you got any tips for me about interviewing family?
It was such a pleasure to interview my brother, and it can be a little emotional too.
Yeah, I have to say,
Lean into it.
My brother is not someone who is kind of very touchy-feely, so I'm
Neither's
hoping
mine.
yeah, but it was emotional, wasn't it? So let's see what we can get out of him. If it's not me, then it's up to you. No pressure. So let me tell you about my older brother, Adam Phrase. He is head of tax for the London practice of the accounting firm BDO, which operates in over 160 territories with more than $12 billion of revenue annually. The team that he leads encompasses 650 people, generating £130 million of revenue per year. And their main role is to advise a range of businesses and high net worth individuals. Adam has 2 daughters and a son who are aged 20, 19 and 17, and has been married to Jane for 23 years. London has always been his home, and he currently lives in Muswell Hill, which is in the north of the city. Adam's mantras are: focus on the positives, and it's all about the people. Hi, Adam. How are you?
Hi, Carrie. That was brilliant. It's almost like you know me quite well. It's kind of like that was word perfect.
Well, I'm trying to
Fantastic.
get to know you a little bit more, so thank you for finally accepting my begging invitations to come on to Notes on Leadership. Now I've got you. There's no getting away from it now. How do you feel about talking kind of quite openly about yourself?
But it was interesting what you said there about when you were talking about the conversation with Kristen's brother.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I wonder if our conversation could be like, because we don't have a lot of sort of real heart to hearts, do we? We're kind of, most of our conversations are fairly, fairly light-hearted, I'd say. So we'll see. I think I'm not normally that comfortable talking in depth about me, really, been the centre of attention. So we'll see how it goes. Ask some probing questions and see if I can.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned
I don't know. I really don't know. I'm kind of slightly nervous, actually.
Okay, well, this is your therapy session. A lot of people have come out this said it feels like a therapy session, but in a good way, you know, because actually, as you say, people don't often get the chance to talk about themselves, especially in your position. You're used to thinking about other people and their emotions and what they're going through. And I guess very few people actually ask how you are.
It's kind of weird, isn't it? Sort of the higher up you get in an organisation, sort of the less you can't expect pats on the back, because it becomes a time when there's no one to pat you on the back or check how you are. So you just have to find your own way of kind of dealing with that, so it's coping with that, and use other mechanisms really.
So what are they?
I was actually chatting to someone yesterday. Well, I was chatting to someone yesterday about this exact same point and how we use actually to sort of for sounding boards and stuff, how we use people, not necessarily, historically you typically use people above you, don't you, as a sounding board, but actually increasingly using people below you in an organisation as a sounding board is actually the way you need to go. And as I say, when you're quite high up in an organisation, you don't often get a lot of choice either.
So have you done that?
Yeah, I do that a lot actually, in my sort of core team around me. We'll often take them to one side and ask them for a view, because, I mean, if you get things wrong with 650 people in your team, it can backfire. So testing the water on thinking is, really important.
And how are you then about taking criticism? Because presumably, it's great to hear the good stuff, but what about the not so good stuff?
Well, I could ask you that question. How do you think I am at taking criticism? Having grown up with me for all these years.
I think you're amazing.
Do you see why I turned it on its head?
I don't think you're bad, actually. But how would you say you are?
God, that's a really hard question to answer. I would say there are certain things, actually, I kind of... things that go to sort of the heart of things that I think I'm good at, sometimes I can sort of relegate. So I often have a joke between my wife Jane and me that if people criticise my driving, actually that I can feel myself tensing up. Someone's in the car, sort of criticising the way that I'm, the where I am in a lane or something like that. But actually, in the workplace, I suppose I will often reach out. I don't know. I think I take it okay, but it's hard to know. I tend to. You can tell, I think, by the way your emotions are inside. If you can feel yourself getting tense, you sort of know you're not taking it well. But I don't know. Try and keep a level head on it.
Yeah, I think all of us don't take criticism that well, do we? It's often, Kristen, the way that... It's uncomfortable. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's often the way that you deal with it, isn't it? How you respond. But none of us find it comfortable, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's the idea of vulnerability, letting yourself be vulnerable. And vulnerability is absolutely uncomfortable. And so being comfortable and being uncomfortable, I think there's a difference, isn't there, between when someone talks about what you did rather than how you did it. So when people personalise criticism, I think then that becomes a bit more vulnerable. So if someone says to me, I didn't think it was a good idea to have that particular meeting, I'll go, I wouldn't find that at all difficult, I don't think. But if someone says to me, the way you spoke to someone about having that particular meeting was actually, I didn't think that was right, or you didn't, appropriate, or didn't achieve the outcome, then I could probably feel myself going, wow, okay. And I think you're making an interesting point, because I think ultimately you're talking about putting somebody on the defensive, right? So whether it's talking about you did this, or here's how I felt, or about something, or this was a bad idea, as opposed to Adam's idea was stupid. So
yeah, but if you say to someone, "This is the way it made me feel," actually, maybe that actually is a way of I think sometimes coming across in a way that you can sort of reach a common ground without making the other person feel
exactly
uncomfortable about it, rather than you shouldn't have done that because it did. I think if you talk about your feelings, it's hard for the other person to argue, isn't it? Then with actually, that's a matter of fact, it made me feel uncomfortable.
No, I think you're absolutely right, and it's one of the first steps to conflict resolution, right, and to coming to solutions, and yeah, absolutely.
As long as that person then respects those feelings, I guess, as well. So that's but it's it's the secret of all good relationships, isn't it? That kind of communication. So, as you say, you can't argue with the way that someone's feeling.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
I've gone down a rabbit hole. Didn't mean to go this way, but it's interesting discussion. I'm sure that Kristen will pick up more on that, because it's fascinating. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you about one of your mantras, focus on the positives, which I know is really you. Where do you think that sort of half glass full mentality has come from?
Well, it's really interesting analogy, I think, between nature and nurture on that point. So I'm sure there is a piece about my genes in that, without doubt. I think our mum was an incredibly positive individual, and Dad had his moments. He was probably a bit yin and yang, but generally. He was generally positive. Had his other motives. Generally, their gene pool, I think, is very positive. And Mum's outlook on life in particular was really pragmatic and really she didn't let sort of stuff get in the way of, just annoying stuff get in the way of what was really important. So I think that was a really good grounding. But ultimately, Carrie, we've had a really lucky, lovely upbringing, haven't we? In a really stable environment. Good friends, stable family. So I just think that having that massively stable, positive upbringing, that's just such a wonderful grounding. And I count myself incredibly fortunate to have had that. And I think that's probably the biggest contributor to positivity.
Yeah.
I've always
you say that,
had people who believed in me, both friends and family around me, and a really enjoyable environment.
Yeah, I mean, although there are people that can grow up in that kind of environment, have great genes because of their parents, but are still able to wallow in self-pity. I mean, does that mean if you come across people like that, or people with a negative outlook, how do you deal with those kind of personalities?
That's all. God, you know me quite well. You've gone straight to the heart of, because this is answer. You know, I think if I think about things that I struggle to deal with, it is actually people with a negative outlook. Because if someone's talking to you with a negative outlook, my brain is, they're halfway through the sentence and I'm already going on to, yeah, but there's a brilliant outcome over there. You just need to think of it slightly differently. But of course, that just simplistic view doesn't necessarily cut it with most people. So you have to do your best to get into their mindset and just see it from their perspective. And it is, but I think that is actually a real challenge for me, because I'm such a, I would probably oversimplify things, I suspect sometimes, and just think,
yeah, life's
simple, right? If the only thing that really matters, okay, ultimately is the health of you and your family. That's kind of the most important thing in life. Because you talk about happiness and all that sort of corny stuff, and then there are lots of other sort of simple building blocks to happiness. But that's at the heart. Everything else is kind of, in a way, certainly in the first world, where in the life that we lead, everything else is detail, really.
I'm going to ask about your musical memories now, because today is a little bit about the music. And I do remember growing up, you had a penchant for slightly dodgy heavy metal music, if I remember, in your sort of like early to mid-teens. Do you remember? Do you
remember what my first single was, though, Carrie? Do you remember what my first single was?
Look, who's asking the questions here? No.
Come on.
Go on.
You know, James Galway. Annie's song.
Oh,
don't worry, it's not one of my songs.
Kristen, do you know that song?
I don't.
Just as well. That shows
it's
that you're
really
far too cool.
Yeah. Really
well,
best you don't.
Or I might know it, but I don't know the name. So that's the other thing.
I'm very impressed that you've actually said that openly in this interview, Adam. So brownie points for that.
Very vulnerability there. Do you like that?
But do you remember the first bands or singers that you were obsessed with?
So, I mean, it's weird because I'm musical, but I grew up in a family. You were obviously musical. You were pretty musical. Dad was very musical. So I grew up with a lot of music around me, and I actually loved, despite being completely toned out, I absolutely loved music. And to this day, I still go to a lot of live gigs and such like. So I think my first love was Queen. Probably, do you call that? It's not really heavy metal, is it? But it's kind of, so I'm a big Queen fan. That was my first gig, actually. It was a Queen gig in the mid-'80s. Big into Queen. I was quite into Meatloaf, a slightly dodgy Meatloaf phase in the early 80s as well. Dabbled with some proper heavy metal of, AC/DC and all that sort of stuff. But generally, early years were sort of, as you say, that sort of Queen sort of stuff was a big influence. And then I sort of graduated onto Bruce Springsteen. Has been sort of the real love of my life ever since. If I could marry again, a sort of a superhero of mine, I'd marry Brucey.
That's a good question. I hadn't thought about asking you that one, but I'll remember that for another interview. So tell us about your first song and why you chose it then.
So do you mind which order should I go? Let's go with.
Oh, you have to go the order that I've sent it to you.
Oh, okay, fine. All right. So the first song is Creedence Clearwater Revival, Bad Moon Rising. So it's a song that kind of reminds me of my gap year, driving around Australia in the outback. We kind of had, I was going to say one CD, it was a tape, of course, in those days, a cassette. I don't know if all your listeners will actually even know what one of those things is. But we only had about 3. One of them was Creedence Clearwater Revival, Greatest Hits, and it reminds me of a time when I suppose a boy became a bit of a man, a childish man, I would say, just driving around in this clapped out Volkswagen camper van. 5 of us in a camper van. It was pretty hot, pretty smelly, but a load of fun.
Trouble
So that was Creedence Clearwater Revival and Bad Moon Rising. My guest today is Adam Fraser, a top London accountant for BDO and also my brother. And Adam, you were talking about your year out, which was prior to going to university. What did you love best about that time?
Do you know what, Carrie? I can't understand why anyone would not do a year out. Literally, why wouldn't you, right? You're on this planet for, well, a lot of years. I don't know. I'm hoping to be on for a fair few yet. You've got an opportunity to do something so exciting, a bit of travelling, which you probably won't get again many people won't get again. Why wouldn't you take an opportunity just to do something completely different? And yeah, I mean, all three of my kids, I think, are going to probably. They're talking about doing a year out before and after uni, probably influenced by me and Jane. But yeah, I just remember an incredible time of freedom, having worked obviously at school, then uni, and then just thinking, wow, you can just do what you want to do. Got some money behind me and did that sort of classic route that a lot of people have done around Asia, Australasia, US, and just meeting loads of people, loads of new experiences, some incredible moments. I remember we just stayed in this place in Thailand. The friend I was with, we stayed in this place in Thailand for about literally 3 weeks on this, out in the middle of Koh Samui, which was, by the way, Koh Samui was nothing in those days, 1991. It was literally a few shacks. And I just like playing chess, cards, drinking whiskey and beer, very cheap whiskey and beer. Just an incredible time.
Yeah,
so
no phones, right? No phones.
No phones, yeah. You used to have to be in contact with anyone. You had to kind of arrange it weeks forward and arrange to be at a particular place in time. To get to send messages to people, you had to receive a letter. You had to go and collect it from a post office, and you had to know somehow, prearrange that someone from home would be sending a letter to that particular post office. It was kind of weird to think, how organised did we have to be in those days?
God, Kristen, I'm listening to this thinking these are the kind of holidays that we'll all be craving soon, aren't we? The escapism, the idea of just not being connected as opposed to connected, the irony of it.
Absolutely.
There's nowhere left. I'm not sure there's many places
No.
left that you can get that kind of escapism.
No, exactly. Right, moving on to university. So you studied mathematical economics. I had to text him earlier because I was thinking definitely had to do with numbers earlier, but I'd forgotten what exactly it was. So just about that, numbers, what is it? Try and make someone who's not really in love with numbers understand what it is about numbers that you get so excited about.
That is. So the weird thing is when my kids bring homework home, or when they used to, most homeworks, my eyes would roll and I think, Jane, can you just deal with this? But with the maths homework, I would love getting involved in maths homework when, even if they wouldn't ask me to help them, I would they would disagree with me, but I genuinely would love helping them with the maths homework. I think it's about it's like a puzzle. It's a puzzle. Every sort of maths problem is a puzzle. It sort of has almost like a symmetry with life in many ways. It's just the way things sort of just fit together. You can be toying with something, and then you just it just replaces thousands and thousands of words. I think much of what maths does, and it's so inherently clever. And
rewarding because it has a definitive answer, right? Which I guess, for some of the more philosophical subjects, that must be more confusing for someone like you.
Yeah, and I just found it kind of intriguing. Like, little things like, did you know if the numbers add up to something that is divisible by 3, if the numbers in a number add up to something divisible by 3, then that number is divisible by 3. And you start to go, what? Hold on a sec. What is that? And you start to just play with that. And the curiosity of it just gets you. And there are loads of little things in maths, and millions of little things like that in maths that just get the curiosity of it gets you.
Oh, you should be a maths teacher listening to you. You've got the energy and the enthusiasm.
Absolutely. Maybe I would have gone further in math having someone like you.
Exactly. Yeah, it's great to listen to. I'm not 100% convinced, but I can get it a bit more than I would have done perhaps in my kind of dry classes at school. Right, let's talk about growing up, because you grew up with me, lucky you, in Harrow, which
lucky me. Gosh, it was such fun, Carrie.
West London for people who don't know where Harrow is. Do you have any standout childhood memories? I mean, we've talked about how idyllic it was, but, you know, if you had to sort of paint a picture of 70s London.
So my first memory is bizarrely this kind of literally. I think my first memory in life is watching the 1974 World Cup final.
That doesn't surprise me.
It's kind of weird, isn't it? The first thing that stuck out. I can still sort of picture the front room, Germany versus Holland. But that's probably not a coincidence. That's my first memory. And actually, God, do I have any standout memories? Gosh, loads. I don't know why this has come into my head, Carrie, but given it's you doing the asking the questions, I can remember putting a cushion on your head, sitting on the cushion.
Oh my goodness!
That's what I mean, brother.
Well, that's interesting that you remember that, because presumably you remember it because of how you were told off subsequently, right? Or how I reacted. Yeah. So are you going to tell that story? In the hospital, as I was lying there.
I do remember being told off about it, and it stuck in my mind. But it's, I do remember being occasionally a little bit. Was I a bit mean to you a couple of times?
I'm sure you're an older brother. It sort of goes with the territory, no?
I'm
not scarred for life. I know this is my time to say it, but I'm not. I'll hold it in.
You're not bitter.
We'll talk about it afterwards.
Oh my God, it's all coming out now.
Let's talk about Mum and Dad. They're Roger and Fiona, and sadly they're no longer with us. How would you describe them as people? I know you have done a little bit about the positivity, or what about as parents?
So, well, as parents, they were. I think they were a brilliant couple, because sort of Dad was sort of the jester, the court jester in the corner. And you kind of need a bit of that. I mean, clearly as kids, you want it to be a fun environment, and he definitely provided the fun and games. And at times it went too far when he literally couldn't take anything seriously, and that's probably a little bit of that rubbed off on me, I suspect. And Mum did have the patience of a saint to be able to put up with some of that, and when the rest of the three of us would literally be larking around. I can remember when Jane came, when I first brought Jane round to the house, he said, let's all do an impression. And then when it got to his turn, he said, okay, what's this? He got a teapot, he put a tea bag on his head. With one hand, he went like this in the shape of a spout. And with the other hand, he poured a jug of water on the tea bag. And he said, I'm a teapot. And that was it. Whenever anyone would come round, he would love the opportunity just to play the court jester. So he was definitely the fun and games. Mum wasn't necessarily the policeman, though. I don't think she wasn't a complete policeman. She would be the sort of, I suppose, the United Nations. She'd keep ultimately the broad framework of rules in place, but without being the police. So, and she was very good at sort of navigating us without feeling like we were being cajoled, I think. So she had a very strong moral compass, and therefore would sort of she'd work in a way that you would self-police quite a lot of stuff. So I didn't feel like we were told off, but I think we came out a bit knowing the difference between right and wrong, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you agree? I don't know. Do you agree with my analysis?
I think it's perfect. Yeah, I think I agree with it, that I look back now and think how our mother put up with the antics of Dad for so long. I mean, she really was quite an incredible human being on lots of levels, but that for me makes me think, I couldn't do it. But they work brilliantly together, I have to say. Yeah. I have, just such good memories of them laughing together a lot. And I think that even though they were very different personalities, so no, I think you've got it spot on. And
I just think laughter plays such an important part in we're all in danger of taking life too seriously. It's such a powerful antidote. And you can actually resolve conflict, can't you, through in some, if you're careful with it anyway, just because it can often point out the kind of the absurdity of a situation, with sarcasm. It makes you then, someone just reflects back what you're arguing about, and you just think, in a kind of a sarcastic kind of way. So, okay, and then you start to reflect and go, okay.
Yeah, maybe.
So I think laughter or sarcasm and all that's a massively important part in our lives, and help sort of see the wood for the trees, for sure.
I wanted to ask about Ali, who was your best friend. He was someone that you went travelling with and who I was very close to as well. And he died around 20 years ago now. And I wanted to ask you, someone who is always looking at the positives, how you dealt with losing someone so close to you at such an early age.
So it actually is coming up to, he would have died the January coming up 20 years ago to that day. So for the listeners, so Ali was a friend of mine from basically my closest mate from the age of 7. I was at school, went to primary school, secondary school, university, with him, travelling with him. He was one of the guys in that camper van, and then a really close friend till he died in nearly 20 years ago. So he was an individual that very much lived for the present. If there was something, there was a choice of two things, and one thing was more fun, he would always opt for that. I mean, literally, the night before his final exam, we'd all finished and we were all going down the pub. He came down the pub with us the night before his finals because he just couldn't resist. So that's a bit of a legacy actually for me, and not quite as far off the scale as that, but definitely makes you realise again the sort of things that, you know, how important people and experiences and enjoying all that are in life. So he was very much one for that. So when he passed away, it was kind of a massive. That's probably the biggest shock. I mean, our mum passed away through a heart attack over, you know, just like that, and that was a big shock. But she was 74, he was 33, so I can still remember the call from you and Jay both called me, and actually I'll never forget that call. It was just that ultimate. You feel like your world has been turned upside down instantly.
Let's move on to your second song choice now. Tell us about this one.
So second, we'll do Bruce Springsteen, My Hometown. So I said earlier about if I could remarry and I could have anyone on the planet, I'd definitely marry Brucey. What a life, what a wonderful life we'd have together. He's sort of given me so much joy over the years. I've seen him 12 times live. And they've all been kind of completely magical experiences where I just feel I'm taken off into another place. It's just like a sort of special happy place. It's just sort of almost like you're removed from real life. And he does it. I don't know, for those that don't know, he always does really, really long concerts, never less than 3 hours, sometimes up to 4. Gives huge amounts of energy, and he kind of at one with the crowd, plays a different set each concert. So he knows his repertoire incredibly well. And there was a moment in the 2013 concert, which he did actually at the Olympic Stadium. It was the first the year after the Olympic Stadium was built. And he was singing My Hometown. And in the refrain, he was exchanging that sort of My Hometown with the crowd. He was singing it, and the crowd was singing it for literally 20 times. And the crowd were perfectly in one with him. And I can just remember the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. It was just a special moment, really special moment. So Bruce Springsteen, My Hometown.
I was 8 years old and running with a dime in my hand to the bus stop to pick up a paper from my old man. Sit on his lap in that big old Buick, steer as we drove through town. Tassel my hair, say son, take a good look around. This is your hometown. This is your hometown. This is your hometown. This is your hometown. In 65 white, there was nothing you could do. Two cars at a light on a Saturday night. In the backseat there was a gun. Words are past, a shotgun blast. Troubled times had come in my hometown. In my hometown, in my hometown, in my hometown. Our main streets, whitewashed windows and vacant stores. Seems like there ain't nobody wants to come down here no more. They're closing down textile mill across the railroad tracks. Foreman says these jobs are going, boys, and they ain't coming back to your hometown, to your hometown, to your hometown, to your hometown. Last night me and Kay, we laid in bed talking about getting out, packing up our bags, maybe heading south. 35, we got a boy of our own now. Last night I sat him up behind the wheel, said, son, take a good look around. This is your hometown.
And that was My Hometown by Bruce Springsteen. My guest today is Adam Fraze. That's my brother also, and he's head of tax for the London practice of the accounting firm BDO. And I wanted to ask you, you're one of the rare breed of people who has been at the same job pretty much, well, all your life, right? Mm. What do you think that says about you?
Oh, blimey. Well, weirdly, not weirdly, I never thought, when I joined, obviously, you know, I joined straight from uni. I thought it was kind of, basically I didn't quite know what to do. So I thought accountancy was another 3 years of training, and then I'll work out what I really want to do in life. Might do some more traveling. And after I qualified and then moved into the tax team, I never really ever thought about leaving ever again, not seriously. So I've always I think had just the culture has always been really, really, really true for the person that I am. You know, I feel like I'm really able to be myself, and I think that's just been really important in when I come to work. I don't feel that I'm putting on a mask or anything like that. And that is actually a really important part of our strategy at BDO, be yourself. So encouraging, you get the best out of people when they are themselves and they're not someone else, and that's definitely been true for me. So it's been a big sort of driver. I'm a big fan of Dan Pink's drive philosophy. You know, there are 3 things that motivate people in life: mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And those 3 things have been a big influence for me in my career. I can see those 3 things really being fulfilled. So I've never really felt the need to look elsewhere.
That's great not to have that need to have itchy feet, because I'm kind of the opposite,
Yeah.
always looking for new challenges. I mean, I know you find that internally. And that's
Yeah.
interesting you say that. And it's also reflected in an incredibly stable family life. You know, I look at you in the same way I would look at mum and dad and say, you know, it's solid, always have been. You met Jane when you were 18, so you've been with her, well, more than half your life, two-thirds of your life, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you, for her sake, the secret to that relationship and its longevity.
Well, she has the patience of a saint, probably. I think it's, oh God, that's a good question. It's a secret to relationship. I think honesty, it's been important, really understanding each other and what we want out of life. So, my career has been massively important to me over my life. And bringing up a family has been really important to her. It's important to me as well. But I think with those understanding what's those fundamental pillars and giving the other person genuine understanding of that and supporting that and genuinely supporting that, what's really important, I think has been that sort of bedrock. It's a great relationship. I think. I hope she'd say the same. Mm-hmm. And stability, I think, is it just makes you just relaxed, doesn't it? If you've got a stable life, it just makes you hugely relaxed. I've got a really stable group of mates as well. I think that's really important. So just being able to enjoy, not concerned about what else is out there, what's around the corner, just being stable and relaxed, and just it gives you the maximum chance of enjoying things.
Yeah, it brings out the best in you, right? And what about being a dad? What kind of dad would you say your kids would say you are?
Well, it's interesting. Having given that description of our dad earlier, I suspect they would see a bit of that in there. I'm sure I've ever put a tea bag on my head and poured water on it, but there's probably a few things that they've cringed at over the years. I'd like to think I'm probably a little bit more of, I've got a bit of that mum side in me as well, and can see the, I think that sort of that overall moral compass, I think, is really, really important. And then knowing the difference between right and wrong, and bringing your kids up to really understand what really matters. Putting the bins out on a Monday night is the typical gag that I get as to what my real role in life is. So putting the bins out on Monday night. When I remember I came home from a mate's holiday recently on a Monday night, and it was as the plane was landing at 6:00. I remember thinking, I've got to get home to put the bins out.
Oh, that's hilarious. I love this sort of, this role of overseeing 650 people at work, and then the Monday night putting the bins out at home. You know where your place is in both arenas, right?
Yeah.
I've got two more quick questions for you. Words of wisdom to your 18-year-old self. I'm always thinking you probably wouldn't have any, because it sounds like your trajectory has been so smooth, with its challenges, but generally so comfortable. Yeah. But do you have something that you might have said to yourself, whisper in the ear?
Well, interesting. I don't think. I mean, I wasn't that. I've got a lot of everything. I like to think I've got a sort of a lot of inner confidence now, but I wasn't particularly confident as a teenager. Had a lot of sort of things buzzing around and just concerns about would you fit in here and there. So I think to have more belief in yourself and not worry about what other people thought. I still worry a little bit about what other people think to a degree, but I think I was probably overly concerned about what other people thought of me and wanted to be liked, ultimately. Realising that if you realise that people will ultimately like you and respect you for what you do, if you do the right thing, mm-hmm. that it just comes naturally rather than the other way around.
Yeah, I'm not trying too hard. And my final question, the words you'd like to see on your tombstone. I'm writing this down.
So I do think some of the stuff on tombstones is quite corny. So I'm not a great one for tombstone. So my favourite tombstone is probably, I've got Highgate Cemetery near me. And I don't know if you know what I'm about to say. So my favourite said Spike Milligan's tombstone in Highgate Cemetery says, "I told you I was ill."
Yeah.
To me, something like that just make you remember. I remember that. I don't remember all the guffy stuff about, always looked on the positives, or
Yeah. And you're making people
People who know
laugh as they walk
exactly.
past.
Well, the people, I'd like to think the people, to me, the people who know you will remember you for who you are, and the impact you had on them. I'd like to think you'd like to have we all want to have an impact. So so Tombstone, I suppose, to make people smile.
Very good. Right,
We
tell
can
us
laugh
about
at death as well as in life, can't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Right, on to your third song. Tell us about this one.
So, sports played such a massive part in my life, both playing and watching. I just think it's such a positive influence on, what you do in terms of team sports. What you learn from team sports is massive. You learn how to interact with people and how to fit into hierarchies, how to collaborate, all that sort of stuff. Really important. And then, watching sport, the buzz that I've got from watching live sport over the years is incredible. Had an incredible amount of lows, an incredible amount of highs. I suspect more lows than highs. So the song that kind of, I think, encapsulates all that, and the hope, it's the hope that kills you. Baddiel and Skinner, Football's Coming Home, I think just encapsulates all that for me.
Gareth Southgate, the whole of England is with you. Oh, it's saved! Saved! We still believe. We still believe. We still believe. We still believe. It's coming home. It's coming home. It's coming. Football's coming home. It's coming home. It's coming home. It's coming. Football's coming home. Tears for heroes dressed in grey. No plans for final day. Stay in bed, drift away. It could have been all songs in the street. It was nearly complete. It was nearly so sweet. And now I'm singing 3 lines on a shirt. Jules Rimet still gleaming. No more years of hurt. No more need for dreaming. Talk about football coming home. And then one night in Rome, we were strong, we had grown. And now I see it's ready for war. As good as before, Shearer certain to score. And Psycho screaming 3 lines on his shirt. Jules Rimet still gleaming. No more years of hurt. No more need for dreaming. Beautiful football by England. Gaza! Oh, that is majestic! Alan Shearer! Italy 0, England 0, and we're there in France, 1998.
That was Football's Coming Home by Beale and Skinner. There is an updated version actually for this World Cup, Christmas style, which is quite amusing. I think you might like that, Adam. I don't know if you've heard it.
Do you know, I haven't actually seen it yet. Jane keeps saying, I've got to watch that. If I see it, I must watch it. It's supposed to be good. Yeah, I must watch that.
It's very funny. Right. I'm sorry, Kristen, I've eaten up quite a lot of your time because it's not often that you get the chance to chat to your brother, especially like this. And wow, I mean, well done, Adam. I have to say that was actually above and beyond what I expected to come out. So
I managed to. The weird thing is, Carrie, we see each other, I don't know, a few times a year, and we can have this conversation anytime. We don't need to wait for your podcast to do it.
No, it's true. But
taking up Kristen's time.
Yeah.
Let's have a chat over Christmas.
Okay, we'll do it. But this is my throw-over question to you, Kristen. But sometimes you just have to be in the right environment to get certain conversations out of people, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's why, for example, coaching is so powerful. Is often things come out that wouldn't come out in other settings. You set the tone, you set the environment, and that's what you do too, Carrie, in your interviews, without a doubt.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It was really fun to listen to the two of you. It's fun to watch how you interact and remember your lives. So thank you for letting me bear witness to that.
I'm going to go and listen to your brother's interview next.
Yes. No, it was also really, really lovely. So there were so many times I wanted to jump in, Adam. And I was making notes wildly as I listened to you. So we'll see what we have time for. But the thing that I loved was, and perhaps I loved it because I'm really not a math person at all. And so listening to you talk about it with such passion and what it is that you loved about it triggered some curiosity in me. You said, I love the way things fit together, and math provides that. And so since what I'm here to talk to you about is leadership, I thought, how do you transfer that part of the math, the way things fit together, to leadership? How does it connect?
Yeah, and that's a really, I've never quite thought of it in that way before, but as you asked the question, it sort of clicked a little bit. So I'm my thinking is naturally quite structured. So, but you have to accept in a people business, and by the way, every business is a people business, even the ones that don't sell services, right? But you have to accept in a people business that everyone is, everyone's different, right? Obviously, we're not robots. So I think organization needs structure. It's that structure, but it's got to have structure with, I call it, structure with loose boundaries and pragmatism. So, in our, I run 650 people in my team, right? That's a big team. We've got to give people a sense of belonging, if you like. That's broken down, and managerial structure, we break that down into much smaller teams, ultimately into teams of 50, 30, etc. But those teams work not independently; they have to work cross team. That's how we get the best both for our clients,
transversally,
and for our people. Yeah, they have to work horizontally as well as sort of vertically with a hierarchy, and they have to work outwardly to clients together as well. So although you create boundaries for good reasons, that sort of mathematical structure, you have to create an environment that lets people understand when it's best to play outside those boundaries. And I think that's a key job in leadership, is making people make those decisions for themselves. You create the structure, the environment to do that. It's a bit like the structure of government in a way. That what the government is trying to do, they're trying to create a framework, aren't they, for an economy, a country to operate effectively. And that's the same job in leadership. You're creating a framework. So it's a hell of a amount of pragmatism that you have to flow through sort of an organizational structure to make it work effectively.
So what would you say that you personally bring to that structure? What would you say that the qualities and strengths are that you bring to that structure as a leader?
So I think the leadership to me is about understanding, kind of, it's simply boiled down to two things, really. It's working out where the destination is.
Okay.
And then it's your journey to get there. And that journey to get there, the vision of the journey. So destination is B, A to B is a straight line, but the journey to get the most effective way, there are a whole lot of roadblocks in that way. So, I think what I bring to that is through both experience and collaboration with others, just understanding the best route to navigate to be, and helping people to do that. When I often say to my team, my job is to make you successful. And actually, when you say that to people, it's not the other way around, by the way. And then they look at you like some kind of trick. But it's absolutely true. If the people in my team are successful, then the business will be successful and I will succeed.
And
So,
I think that's
and
what people talk about,
doors.
leadership.
Yeah.
That's what leadership really is, as opposed to sort of management or old-styled, old-fashioned leadership.
But actually, I need the people in my team to appreciate that as well. And it's all very well me knowing that, but if they don't realise that my job is to make them successful, we won't work well together.
This is true.
So they won't come to me and say, "Can you?" There's a particular door that needs opening for me. I mean, I'm talking not real door, euphemistic door, or I need introducing to someone. I've got a problem that I can't solve that I may have seen, or actually, just tell me what you're doing, because I may know that someone else over here is doing something that is incredibly complementary to what you're doing, and putting those two things together. So, helping you, creating the environment for your team to understand that.
So it sounds like being accessible to them is something that you strive for.
Yeah, exactly. So if you look at my diary, it's full of catch-ups, which often are, I don't always have a preconceived agenda. Often it's just understanding what they're up to and building a massive mind map, really, of what's going on in the business. And out of that mind map, iteratively, you just develop ways to improve the business, marginal gains coming through time and time again, because I'm building this huge mind map of interactions, real interactions, not information, understanding, not just information, but understanding how people's challenges, how people are feeling, all that mind map of all those sort of things.
Recently,
massive jumbled.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And something I say when I work with teams or clients or teach about leadership is that a leader needs to create a space where people share information with them.
Yeah.
So,
but they have to feel safe about that.
Exactly.
Actually, you mentioned vulnerability earlier. Actually, if you're trying to get the best out of someone, understanding what makes them tick, and importantly, what they're maybe afraid of, that you can have exactly the same fact pattern affecting two different people in an organization, and one person treats that fact pattern differently. And in a professional services organization, which we are, motivating people to do the right thing might require two different strategies with the same set of facts, because people are just reacting differently to that.
So it's about adapting that communication to be able to reach the person that you have in front of you, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, exactly. And there are some people with the same sort of facts. I'm just thinking of two partners right now, so where actually there might be more of a tell, because they're just, that might work better. Whereas others, it's more of a sort of an understanding, empathetic, guidance. I think you have to change your communication style, don't you?
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah. And you brought up the word empathy, and I'm really curious to ask your opinion. You have a big team here. I have no doubt you're extremely busy. And something that I get a lot from people that I work with is some pushback on empathy from when you're a leader. I've worked with everything from the police academy here in Catalonia to MBA students, and just last week with a large organization, leaders of a large organization, and we talk a lot about empathy in leadership, and the frequent question or pushback is around, but if I'm too empathetic, somebody said the other day, I give this much, they take the whole arm. And, how do you deal with that? I have my answers. I generate discussion around that. But it comes up so often, this fear that if we're empathetic, we can't be good leaders. People will take advantage. Can you talk a little bit about how you manage that?
Yeah, that's good. That's another interesting one. I don't agree with the premise, by the way. I'll just say that up front. I don't agree with the premise at all. I think empathy is one of the most important traits of a leader, and I also don't agree with the implication. I know you meant it to be provocative. I don't believe with the implication that everyone's out to take advantage of stuff. I don't think that's how the human nature works. By the way, I'm not suggesting you believe that, but
these are the comments that I get and I have to deal with, and so I think it would be it's a very frequent concern for people working on leadership.
It's a real concern that often it's born out of circumstances and themselves feeling vulnerable or afraid of what. It may be a lack of confidence to achieve something. It may be the metric that they think is really important. Actually, they don't think they can achieve, and therefore it's leading them to really behaviours that are not congruent with what you want as an organisation. So I think what you've got to do in that situation. I'll use an example like someone comes to you and says, "I've got too much work on." Empathy point might be you go, "Well, okay, we'll take something off you. We'll lighten your load," and then going to your point. Well, maybe great. They can sit back and put their feet up and just take life easy. And I think the way I would handle it, if someone came to me and said, "I've got too much work on," I would bring it back to ultimately what is it that the organisation wants to achieve, and what do you want to achieve in your career, and try and align the two. I think the organisations work best when you align career aspirations of the individuals with the organisation goals. So, in that case, if the individual said, "I'm aspiring to get to position X, which is maybe up the ladder, or I'm aspiring to develop my skills in a certain area," then actually look at what actually are they doing the right things to do that. And maybe there's a different way to actually achieve that. So it's looking at what their own goals are and what the organisation goals are, and trying to align the two. And then just being really honest with them, because ultimately, if they want to get position X, and you say, well, actually, in order to do that, the sort of number in our world is charge billable hours in the professional services world. The number of chargeable hours, billable hours we would expect from someone of your level is actually the amount. It might be the amount that you're already doing. You may not be doing too much in that example. So be understanding, well, why is it that's feeling too much to you? Because in order to achieve your goals, we do need that much, Ali. So there might be something else going on. Yeah. So being really honest and I think transparent about those goals ultimately get to the answer.
And I think that's a great way of looking at it. I think oftentimes leaders struggle when they have to give bad news, maybe, and give an answer, a response that they know is not going to make the person feel good, or they're not able to alleviate a stress or give them give into the request that they're asking. And
it's interesting. Some of the best, tightest teams I've been in over the years have been following bad news or bad moments. I can remember after the 2008 crash, which is a difficult time for sure. We had to make some redundancy. The team I was working at the time, there were some redundancies coming out of that. After that, and there were a lot of uncertainties, but getting everyone together, realizing that we have a really strong business fundamentally, and that we're all kind of together. We're in it together in driving it forward. You can use sometimes bad news as a catalyst for sort of coming together and driving the business forward as a team. And it definitely, I can really remember that working on the back of the 2008 crash. So I don't think bad news is always, you can use it in a really positive way.
Right. And I think that's where you shift your leadership style. And I've heard you, Daniel Goleman is the one who talks about the 6 leadership styles. Yeah. And, I've heard you talk about everything from coaching and aligning values to creating trust. And I'm hearing that you're able to shift between those styles, which apparently is quite effective with considering you're doing great. It's wonderful. We're we're coming towards the end of our time. I just, as I listened to you speak with Carrie and in our talk, I just was making some notes about all the values I heard you that you're espousing in your life, and that you've brought in from different influences throughout experiences in your life. And I just thought I'd reflect them back to you to think about, and how they show up in your leadership. Problem solving, curiosity, travel, adventure, stability, positivity, family, trust, friendship, health, fun, sense of humor, moral compass, autonomy, commitment, empathy, support, and authenticity.
Wow, what a list.
Yeah.
Gosh, if I can, if I can live up to half of those values, I'll be happy. It's great. It's a brilliant list, isn't it?
Well, what I think is brilliant about it is that I grabbed hold of them as you were sharing how you're already living them, and so I think that's what makes it inspiring. Yeah.
That's great. That's good.
Thank you so much for talking. I'd love for you to say a little something about your last song before we finish. And thanks again.
So, thanks, Chris. I've really enjoyed the chat. It's flown by 55 minutes.
Yes, it has.
And it's nice to have such an in-depth conversation with my sister. We should do it more often, Carrie.
Okay.
You have homework. You have coaching homework
At Christmas.
over the
Exactly.
holidays.
So, look, as you were talking that list, one thing was going through my head, which was, people, I think, and experience with other people, the interaction with other people sort of was the common factor, I think, across that list of traits. And my experience, I'm an extrovert by nature, but my experiences with others, I get my energy from others, and my, joy comes from the interaction that I have with others, whether it be family or friends. And actually kind of takes you to my last song. So my last song is Oasis, some might say. And this was the last song at the party of my wedding to Jane. This was back in 1999. And the one of my mates had was doing a really amateur video of that evening. So we didn't have a professional video. We wanted sort of the slightly more authentic amateur style. So got some rather some inappropriate interviews I remember he did with some of the guests. But on that refrain, I don't know if you know that song, Some Might Say, but the refrain, it literally, in the fade out, you've got Liam Gallagher saying the words "Some might say" lots and lots of times. And the mate of mine who was on the camera, and each time he said "Some might say," panned onto a different member of the party, dancing their head off. 2:00 in the morning, massive smile on their face. So you literally pan from one to another. It must have been 25 times, a different person. All of them have one thing in common, just having a great time. So it summarizes life is about people for me.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Should never